This is book 3.
Shit's gonna get real. You know, in a moment, it could all stick in my head.
Anyway, hey guys, welcome back to Zodiac Sunday. I'm Kens.
And I'm that nerd, Allison.
And welcome to our
Spicy Book Nook.
So, yeah, book 3, guys. We are 25% through book 3 already.
Insane.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. Starting off back after what happened at the end of book 2, where they were attacked by the nymphs, and the girls, you know, stuck up for and helped fight.
They found out that they have fire.
Yep, they have this crazy fire that no one can figure out.
Yeah.
So here we are in book 3.
Darcy saved Lance, and then Tori fought for Darius, and then Lance had to heal Darius, and it was like a whole thing.
Darius sort of died. Anyway, we talked about that in the last video.
Yeah.
This video,
The record.
first off, I want to start with my boy ranking.
At the start of this book?
Yeah, so at the start, Orion is Darius?
Darius.
Yeah. Caleb.
Caleb.
Darius. And then
Seth Max. That's what we left off last time.
Or was it Max Seth? I think they were pretty even.
You kept saying that Max was the worst, and that's why I kept being like, but you haven't heard his backstory yet.
I have a little bit.
A little bit.
I don't give a shit. Anyway, so we start off in an Orion chapter. And like we were talking about, this is the fallout, right? This is what happened after. 12 deaths, 8 from Starlight, 4 from Zodiac. Sad.
All students.
All students. One of which was part of Seth's pack. I'm pretty sure it was his beta, right?
Yeah.
It was
Which
Ashanti.
is a pretty big deal when an alpha
Yeah,
loses
it's a
their
big
beta.
loss for the wolf pack.
Seth is distraught. Like he's upset.
All of the wolves are. So we're in an Orion chapter, going through the aftermath, like we talked about, and he comes upon Washer. And this is the first time I've ever seen Washer have a good experience, or like a not creepy, weird interaction with someone. And essentially they're both like, holy shit. Like, that
What
just happened. They're drinking together.
How did they get into the school? Is a great question, because like Zodiac has protections around it. You have to like come through the gates. You can't just like Stardust in normally. Like there's protections.
Yep.
So how?
What happened?
Weird.
And Washer is pretty much like, I read the cards. I can't believe I didn't push harder. Like, damn. And then he's like, she didn't believe me. Lance is like, it's really not your fault. Like, nobody would have believed you anyway.
Yeah.
And Lance kind of drinks himself into oblivion. And he's got, it's like a midnight thing where Principal Nova is calling everybody together into like a conference.
Yep.
And they're essentially like, thanks to the Vega twins, like we didn't all die.
Yeah.
Which is kind of huge, right? Because they've all up to this point been like, you guys are worthless. You don't
belong
spots.
here. Yeah.
Like, get the fuck out.
You
And
can't
now
make
they're
it.
like, holy shit.
They just saved us.
They have fire that can kill nymphs.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Without ever transforming.
Yeah.
It's literally just in their normal Fae form.
So, which is kind of insane.
Huge deal. Huge deal. And then, like we said, Lance kind of drinks himself into oblivion, falls asleep, and then Francesca wakes him up. He's getting called. Francesca's at his door. She's like, hey, come on, let's go. And he's like, I'm not late yet. And she's like, I need your memories. He's like, no. You cannot have them. And then he drinks from her, and then he goes to the assembly. And she's kind of like trying to get him to open up to him or get him to open up to her. And he's like, nah, not up for it right now. I just need to be alone. Like, I don't want you to stay with me tonight. Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And she's like, fine, but you still owe me your memories. And then he goes to the assembly. The assembly happens. They're essentially like, we understand that this happened. We understand that people died, but we have class. You will go to class.
Yeah.
The reckoning is happening. There you go.
They also have people patrolling now.
The fib is everywhere. Trying to investigate on how they got in, like what's going on, making sure there's no more there.
And just like making sure that the students are protected if there were to be any nymphs still left on campus.
Yes. And then he is like catching Darius's eye because Nova puts a curfew. I think it's like what, 9 p.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
And for Lance and Darius,
they can't leave to go fight nymphs.
Yep, they can't leave to go fight nymphs, and they can't train because there's people everywhere, like tracking movements and all.
They would
that.
see that they're doing.
So Lance makes eye contact with Darius. They walk out, and they're having a conversation. And Lance is like, "Wait." He steals the breath from Darius so he doesn't continue talking, and he's like, "Someone's watching us," and it's a fib guy. And he was like essentially trying to listen in, and he's like, "I just think it's weird. I know that you and the Acruxes have a relationship. Why are you pulling his son out here, Professor?" And then Lance is essentially like, "And your superior, my girlfriend," talking about Francesca. And scares the fib guy away. And that's kind of the end of Orion's chapter. He gives Darius detention to give them time to figure stuff out so that they can train. Yeah. And this chapter ended with at Zodiac Academy, they called this Hell Week. And this year, it was more literal than ever. Because they're still trying to figure out who... My goodness, what is Ascrax's name? Lionel. There we go. We're trying to figure out who
Ascrax's name.
We're trying to figure out who he's trying to pull for the eclipse.
Yeah. Or solstice or whatever it is.
The solstice, yeah.
That's coming up. Yeah.
And so that's another thing that they're trying to figure out. Then we're moving to...
The Hell Week is the start of all of the first year students going into the reckoning.
So nobody knows about this. This is like a long held secret. They don't tell any of the students about it. You're not allowed to talk about it outside of like the school. And even Sophia, like we go into that in the next chapter. Tori and Darcy are like, "What the fuck is this? Like, why is everybody wearing robes? What is going on?" And Sophia's like, "I called my mom and she just fucking laughed at me."
Yeah. It's pretty much where they get hazed and just beat up, pushed around, bullied, just pushed to their like max mentally for a week before the actual trials that are the reckoning.
To make sure you are thoroughly challenged, the rest of the student body will be throwing further tests your way at every turn and making your lives hell. Will you make the cut for this year's official enrollment? It's time to prove how fit you are.
Yeah. Higher years wear robes. They go like all into it. They like pretty much just attack students in between classes. Just full blown
hazing. Yeah. It is literally hazing. Anyway, so Caleb messages her and is like, "We need to draw a line like between our two relationships." And Tori's like, "Bitch, we don't have a relationship." And Caleb's like, "That's so cold. I know you felt things." And he's just being like,
Do you want me to beg? Are you ignoring me now?
And then he sent her...
You want to see how frustrated I am?
He sent her, I think it was a video or a picture or something with like, he had just gotten out of the shower and it shows up to like his waist. So she's not seeing anything. He's like, "Want to come over and see the rest?" Okay, my dude. But of course, you know.
I don't even think Tori responds to him.
She doesn't. But she wants to. Yeah. And that's like something that her and Darcy are talking about. Because Darcy stayed in her room after the night before because they were scared.
Because of the nymph attack.
And...
Then they go to leave to go to
And they get swamped with the older students trying to... They say fresh meat.
Fresh meat.
And Marguerite gets them with coercion. And she had written whore on Tori's forehead and then something about crows.
Just talk to my raven on Darcy's. Going back to like what the fake article that one news reporter had.
Gol Spatula or something like that. Gus.
About them.
And then they run into Sophia outside and Sophia has something on her forehead as well. But she knows she found like found a way to break the spell. And they get it off of their foreheads. And then they're just kind of trying to
survive Hell Week.
Yeah.
And still go to their classes.
Yes. So Sophia transforms and gets them away. And then when they get to class. We're in a Darcy
magic.
chapter.
Yep.
She's super nervous about seeing Orion after they made out and after they fought together. And she's like, this is the first time they're seeing each other in a formal setting.
Yeah.
And she's like, ugh.
The nerves.
And then they get a Zodiac Academy has been mentioned in the Times. This is another article by our lovely Gus. We know how he feels about the girls. It is an attack on Zodiac article. Yeah. So it essentially goes through, hey, Zodiac Academy was attacked. This happened, this happened, this happened. Then it talks about how
the people that were like fighting for us were the Vega twins. They have this mysterious fire. They thought that they were helping, but they were just doing more damage than...
Yeah, essentially saying that their fire was out of control and they were hurting more people
than helping.
And essentially insinuated that they were the ones that were killing the students.
Yeah, that they were unfit, and no wonder the killings were so high.
Darius, he quoted a quote from Darius in here. And the girls later are like, well, he's fucking talking shit about us, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, oh, well, you know, he lied about a lot of things. They could be lying about that. And then one of the most surprising things is Tyler Corbin, the little fucking doucher.
I love him.
I'm getting ready to talk about that I love him too. Walks over to them and is like...
The one that always reports crazy shit on Facebook.
Yeah.
That guy.
He's just an ass. He was an ass.
Yeah.
He walks over to them and is like, hey. And they're like, yeah. He's like, I just wanted to say... Well, what you both did when the nymphs showed up, it was really brave. And I'm not sure I would still be here if it wasn't for you two. That Gus Valola guy is a filthy liar. My mom works for the Daily Solaria, though, so I'll make sure she gets the truth. The real truth.
So this is the start of Tyler Corbin and his mom going to bat for the Vega twins. So he's not really, like, in the ass.
But he's a supporter. He's loyal.
So this is
Sophia. She's not in the ass.
This is the start of them, for every article that the heirs put out about them, him and his mom immediately spin it back for them. And it's like Tyler and his mom are going to bat for them, like head to head against the Celestial Council.
It's the start of people starting to change for the twins.
Good.
Which is so cool to watch. Good.
Whenever anything starts happening in these like next couple books, when something happens, it's always Tyler coming up and being like, we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. I got you. And you're like, aw, that's so cute.
So super cute, like getting through it. And then he left them a little leaf that said, thank you. I was like, oh, my heart, my dude.
That's a heart under all that douchebaggery.
And then class starts and Orion's being his normal douchebagness. And he steals Diego's hat. And he's like, if you can get this hat by class and you can keep it, blah, blah, blah. And he tells them that they're all bottom-feeding losers.
And this is how weak.
Yeah, this is how weak. And he's kind of going through, like, this is how weak. We know you're not strong. We know you haven't been taught to protect yourself. But fight back.
That's what
show your Fae.
Even if you know you're not strong enough, even though you know that it's, like, a losing battle, Fae still fight.
Yes.
And so he's like, if you don't want to fight, then get the fuck out and actually leave Zodiac Academy because we don't want you here.
And then he's like, so tell me, like, what you guys suck at. And he's, like, counting down on his fingers. And as soon as he gets to, like, the last one, someone is like, everything? What specifically do you suck at? And Sophia yells practical magic. And this is when he's kind of like, yeah, you guys just need to try. Like, stop just letting vampires feed from you. It seems like you're beginning to like it.
He specifically asked Tyler Corbin, he's like, how many vampires fed from you? And they're low-level vampires. They're not as strong as Caleb. And he's like, 4? He's like, you didn't fight them back?
He says, well, it's just easier to, let them get on with it. Precisely. And some of you actually enjoy it, don't you?
Tori. Yeah. Okay. He has no room to talk considering him and Darcy.
Anyway, so he's kind of just trying to get them to stand up for themselves. Like, talk back. Like, don't just let vampires come at you. And then they get their schedules of when they're going to have to do all of their trials. The big thing about this is you have to do a trial in every single element you have. Meaning the girls will have to go through all 4 trials.
Yeah.
And then Monday is the reckoning, which coincides with the whatever it's called. The solstice.
Yeah, so Thursday's air. Friday's water, then Saturday's fire, Sunday is earth, and then Monday is the reckoning.
And then, well, Orion's going on his little stint.
Mm-hmm.
One of the kids get up and literally leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes back in and he's like, just kidding. I want to be here.
He's like, what?
And so Orion like takes him into the hall and starts yelling at him. And Diego goes up and steals his hat from the watermelon.
Mm-hmm.
And then Darcy hides it. And Orion is like, makes Diego stand up and is like, oh, you don't have it, do you? And then he goes
straight to Darcy.
And looks at Darcy. And she's like, you're not going to reach up my skirt and grab it. And then he's like, pretty much every house is going to lose points until Darcy gives it back. And she gave it back.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, how the hell am I supposed to get it back if you threaten everyone in class? And Orion says, that, Mr. Polaris, is exactly what you have to figure out. And then we move into a Tori chapter. I don't even remember what happened here. There was a lot of, like, building.
Yeah.
In this first part.
A lot of, like,
and
fluff almost. It's just, like, building up to their
this is kind of funny. So they go into the orb to eat lunch, and Geraldine and Angelica are there, and they're like, Tori is eating her food, and she's like, I wonder if I stole someone's drink because this is diet.
Mm-hmm.
And Geraldine just starts fucking laughing her ass off.
Uh-huh.
She's like, ha ha ha, hell week, I got you a diet.
She's like, what? She's like, the mayo in your sandwich is also half fat too. That's like the worst thing that they could think of to actually do to the twins.
Which is
without
so
like attacking
cute.
them. They just wanted to like, ha ha ha.
They wanted to pull
calories
on them, and it's just freaking adorable. Like, it's so cute.
And then both twins act outraged just to like help them play along. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do something like that. How could you, Geraldine?
And then someone comes over from Air and is like, or from Tara. Yeah, from Tara House. And is like, Caleb said you have 2 minutes.
And then
so
Caleb
Tori
messages
now
her
has to explain.
and says TikTok.
Tori now has to explain their little game.
Mm-hmm.
And so she ends up going along with it because this is her chance to not get bit, right?
Yeah. She's like fighting back. Look at me.
Yep. And then she ran.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts this game with Caleb and he's like, got ya.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up finding her. They're in the library and he bites her pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, ow. He's like, sorry, I've been running on empty since the fight with the nymphs and I don't want to bite anyone else, which is weird, right? Caleb is not a monogamous person.
Mm-mm.
He will just go and get it from anywhere.
But her blood, the magic in her blood is so potent and powerful that like...
Is it just her blood?
Poor Caleb. He's all about Tori right now, and he doesn't even know it.
But she still hasn't really forgiven him yet. She's like, you took part in pushing me in the pit bullshit. And she's like trying to come to terms with, like, I can't be around him anymore because he's a douchebag. Mm-hmm. And then they just kind of decide that they don't care. They're like, we're just going to do this. Yeah. I'm going to separate. And she's like, I have to go to class. And he's like, do you? She's like, I have trials this week. Get out of here. And so he
invites her to Tara House.
Yes. He's like, come stay with me tonight. She's like, but curfew. He's like, you're going to stay with me the whole night. He's like, if I can get you to class on time. She's like, I'll think about it. Mm-hmm. So he gets her to class on time. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I didn't say I would. I said I would think about it.
Because he like picked her up and sped them back to class.
And they got there with a minute to spare. Mm-hmm. And so we start their fire class. And while they're in this fire class, they're sharing magic with both Darius and with Caleb because she makes Darcy try to do it with her. Yeah. And so while they're starting to do this, he's like, let's see if there's merit to your whole uniform thing. Darius says to Tori. Yeah. And they're trying to get her magic to be controlled. And she's like, put your hands on my hips. I'm using both hands. And she's able to do stuff, but it's still like definitely fucking with her magic. And Darius is like, why don't you just not wear your uniform? Yeah. She's like, and just not listen to the professor?
And he's like,
it's the Faye thing to do. Like, just do what you want.
You're literally in line for the throne. You can just tell him, fuck off. I'm going to not wear my uniform.
Yes. And she's like, I would never do that. But like they're able to kind of control their magic a little bit. But as soon as Darius lets her go, he's like, well, we have a date on Wednesday because they're going to race their bikes. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I didn't agree to that, but he'd already walked away. And Darcy was not able to power share.
Yeah. Well, also,
Caleb.
Tori's like, if I win, I get to keep the bike. And he goes, you won't win. And she goes, well, then you won't be afraid to agree to my terms, then will you? And he goes, well, what do I get
if I win? I'm going to work on your bike.
On your bike. Give it the mods you don't think it needs to prove you wrong for a second time.
And then after that class, we move into a Darcy chapter. And it's her time to go into another liaison session with Orion.
Mm-hmm.
And they go into the classroom, and it's just super awkward. It's super weird. He tells her he thinks she's going to be a dragon. A dragon bigger than the dragon that...
Yeah, he said, though a kind I thought would be extinct. They're like super big. The Ismenian dragon, powerful order, the largest of the dragon orders. Its fire were 3 times the strength of its smaller cousins. I don't understand why. If he's looking at extinct orders and he's like, dragons, it has to be a dragon. They're not big.
Because he does not know that how their magic is replenished yet. But, I think once that clicks in his brain.
But, okay, later it goes over. Because we already know that we can guess that they're phoenixes. It goes over later how people have known that, like, because phoenixes used to, like, it's like one of the top orders. They used to rule a bunch. Like, phoenixes were just like dragons. They're, like, super high in the pecking order. They know that their fire is super powerful, and they know that their fire kills nymphs.
But there has not been phoenixes in so long.
But Lance Orion is a nerd. You don't think he can find it in a fucking...
I just think he doesn't want to believe it.
Ah!
Which is crazy, though, because even if they're dragons that are bigger than Darius, like, that's still
a
big deal
thing.
Anyway, they're like...
He's big dumb.
We can't be here anymore. Like, she's kind of like... They're, like, fighting about the fact that they have to be liaisons together. And they go, and he's like, let's get out of here and go for a walk. So they go for a walk, and he's essentially like, let's see if we can get that fire to come back out of you. So they're kind of, like, just messing around with each other.
Yeah.
Using their magic, trying to get her stuff to come out. And it doesn't really work, but they get into, like, the situation, and she's like, I need a new liaison. And he's like, yeah. And then he says, as he's on top of her, he's like, I could have lost you in that battle, or I could have died without ever knowing how this might have played out. I owe you my life. Thank you. Like, which is kind of big, right? He's like honoring her. And then she's like, you're firmly team Aries. He's like, you're right, I am. And she's like, I need a new liaison. This has to stop. And she leaves, and she, like, doesn't look at him. And she's like, my atlas pinged, and I took it out of my bag. My soul fraying as I found a private message waiting for me from Orion. What if I don't want it to stop? What a motherfucking back and forth motherfucker.
He's, clearly team Aries. Kind of an asshole to her, like, all day, even though she saved his life. And then he's like, but what if I don't want it to stop?
And then we move into a Seth chapter. So this is when he's finally getting rid of his fleas that Darcy gave him. And he realizes that his pack is kind of shunning him right now.
Yeah.
Because he
inadvertently
accidentally brought Darcy into the pack.
Yeah.
It's like super, super bad for him to initiate someone that is not of their order. And so all of the wolves are like, we love you, but you need to get rid of her. We won't follow you again until you do. So they're not running with him. They're kind of ignoring him. They're not sleeping with him.
So even though, he got rid of his fleas, he does not have his pack still. And it's kind of like hurting him because he did just lose the beta. And I don't even know if it's in this chapter yet. Has it talked about how he either initiates her into the pack or
she has to challenge him?
Yeah.
Yep. So there's 2 ways to do it. She has to challenge him. He can't force her to do it. Yeah. Or she has to just
accept him. And please him and come into the pack.
So he's like reeling over that, and then the heirs text him, and they're like, hey, we're staying at King's Hollow tonight. And so they get there, and he's like, he like needs love because he hasn't gotten in a while. So he's like, where's Caleb? So he goes out and sees Caleb in their spot, and he's like coming on to Caleb. and he's like nuzzling in and starts to like blah, 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 on his thing. And he's like, remember that time in the Shimmering Springs last year? I burrowed my hands into his hair and he released a deep growl in his throat. That was one time, and there was a girl there too. Not the whole time. But Caleb does end up pushing him off.
There is, I forget.
And he says,
what book.
but now the only girl I craved was Darcy Vega, because it was kind of driving him insane that he had made her a part of his pack, but she had not been initiated yet.
He had made her an Omega, which is kind of like a big part of a pack. So yeah, it's kind of bothering him. Also, that scene in the Springs, it shows up. I forget I think it's in the Live and Let Lionel, which is the different one-shot stories throughout the books. I think it's in that one. It's not in Foxy Tales. I think it's in Live and Let Lionel, where it shows that instance that happened between them.
Anyway, so they go back in, and Seth is feeling a little bit better because he's getting a little bit of love, and Darius is just pissed, and he will not let Max siphon his anger off. He's like, I don't want to let go of it. My father just called. He believes our claim is officially under threat. Before Sunday, the Vega twins were easy prey. It was a joke to think that they'd ever be considered for the Solarian throne, but now the fire they cast was fucking powerful. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Celestial Times did a good job of downplaying it, but that's one newspaper. There's already online footage.
Yeah.
And as they're talking about it, they're like, well, we need to get back at them again. And my boys, because Seth is moving up slowly.
I told you.
And
they all start to grow on you.
Well, they start fighting over her a little bit because they're like, oh, if she is a dragon, you could marry her, Darius.
You could just marry her instead of marrying your cousin.
And then, of course, Caleb is jealous about that. Mm-hmm. He's like, she's my source. It's natural for me to be possessive. That doesn't mean I care about her. And then Max says, we need to remind the school who the real monarchs are. It's time we put the Vegas back in their box. And my boys, Seth sighed, knowing I had to say it as I looked to Max. Sorry, bro. I can't do shit right now. Darcy's my Omega. So he hadn't told the boys about this yet, but now he's telling them. And Caleb says, I'm enjoying my fun with Tori. We'll just wait and see if they can pass the reckoning. The boys are finally standing up and be like, no, I'm not going to fuck with them.
I'm not doing it. Seth literally can't. So, like, remember when Caleb was like, oh, she's my source. I can't, like, actively fight her or whatever. Seth is actually like, no, she's, like, pretty much in my pack. I cannot.
Yeah.
So.
And Darius is like, or Caleb says, do you think you might really end up married to one of them? No, that's the thing. If Lionel believes they're about to emerge as dragons, I don't think he'll take that lying down. In fact, I think he'd rather kill them before that ever happens. Crazy, right? So then we go into a Tori chapter, and they're going to their dragon enhancement class. Mm-hmm. Angelica is there. They know her. She's part of the ass. She supports them. And there's, I think, 5 other dragons, including Darius?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when they go in there, Darius is like off to the side by himself. The other dragons just want to get into Angelica's pants because they like to interbreed. And
she's like the only girl dragon there at Zodiac.
Yes. So all the other dragons are trying to get with her except for Darius because they're cousins. Mm-hmm. And essentially what they're doing there is they're in the enhancement class to see if they're dragons because that's what everybody is assuming that they are.
Like help their
orders come out.
Emerge.
So they're like, we need to see if we can get that fire to come out of you again. So all of the dragons like put their dragon fire up to the world. Mm-hmm. And the girls are like trying and they can't do it.
Yeah.
So Darius is essentially like, well, you're not dragons. You may as well go back to your houses. Mm-hmm. And then they all take off. The dragons all take off to go for a flight.
Yeah.
And Darius kind of fucks with them a little bit and like goes over them. Mm-hmm. And Tori throws ice at his back and he like kicks it off. And then they go flying. And the girls are like, oh, I would really love to fly.
They mention it so many times throughout the book. They're like, if I could only fly, like the sky calls to me.
Weird. Anyway, so Darcy randomly is like, I have to pee really bad. I have to go right now. So she runs to the bathroom and Tori's like, what the fuck? And then Max comes out of the woods and is like, word that she had to pee so bad.
Yeah. He cast one of those like, it's like the like distraction spells that a lot of people put onto things where like when you walk up to it, you just have to go to the bathroom and you just like walk away.
He says he's like manipulating the water in someone's body is fairly easy for someone as powerful as me. But essentially, he's like trying to call a truce with Tori because of his secret. He's like, I don't like owing you.
Yeah.
You have my secret. You're not telling it. I really don't like owing you. So he teaches her how to breathe underwater.
Because of her fear.
Because of her fear. Which is like, it's pretty big for her. And it was actually a really cute.
And the fact that he as an air and as like the water air, like taught her how to do that. It was just super cute.
It was actually a pretty cute chapter. And then he says, now we're even, little Vega. Let's get back to being enemies. Because he was like, it's making it really hard for me to go against you when you know the secret and I owe you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we move into a Darcy chapter. And they're going into their Earth Elemental class. And as they're going to their class, Tyler is like, psst, and pulls them into the woods and is like, there's seniors up there. They watch Kylie go in and then they start to hear screaming. So they're like, Tyler stripped out of his stuff to kind of flip them away.
Yeah.
Because he's also a Pegasus. And so this is the second time
that
they're being
helped,
saved. Well,
and
the
he's
second time they're being
them.
saved by Pegasus too.
Yeah.
But yes, it's also the second time.
that he's helped them.
Well, it's the first time he's helped them. First time he was just sweet.
Well, he is going to help them with he's talking to his mom about the article.
But we haven't seen anything about that yet. Yeah. He's like, I owe you one for saving his life. And then they people start to hear them, and they get, I think it was Darcy's feet. Yeah. So they vine Darcy's feet and they pull her off, but they just kind of scuffle a little bit, and Tyler gets away with them and takes them to their Earth class.
Yep.
As they're going to their Earth class, Seth and Caleb are there kind of waiting for them. And Caleb takes Tori and runs away, and Seth is like, I need to talk to you, Darcy. And he essentially explains to her like what's going on. And before that, I forgot to mention this, Tyler was like, yeah, you can do me a favor. You can let Sophia know that I'm interested and kind of talk me up to her. Which is super cute because the girls are like, wait, well, she's with Diego. And they're like, Diego hasn't asked her out, so fuck him.
Yeah, exactly. Make a move.
Anyway, so they get to class, and Seth and Caleb takes Tori, and Seth is essentially like, hey, look, like, I'm going to go all alpha wolf on you if you don't just let me initiate you. And there's two ways to do it. It's to please him or to fight him. And he's like, you're not going to win. He's like, meet me tonight. To make you feel better, I'll send you this email that has like really incriminating shit on me. And like it to help you feel better, that you have that in your hands so that you'll feel more comfortable with me. Yeah. And she's like, whatever, okay. And then they go to the orb for food after class. And while they're there, they tell Sophia, and Tyler comes over and kind of asks her out.
Yeah, in front of everybody.
And Geraldine is so freaking cute. She's like, do I hear correctly? Do you have a suitor vying for your hand, Sophia? Sophia's like, I wouldn't put it like that. And he comes over and he asks her out.
Geraldine's like, you must go to him.
Geraldine's
your
like,
love awaits.
Say yes. And so she's like, this calls for a toast. And so she gets alcohol and brings it over.
Diego is upset the entire time. And Darcy's just like, well, you should have asked her out.
You should have moved quicker, my dude. And Geraldine took a large swig of her own drink. I must sadly decline for the drinking. I'll stick to one glass or my wild and wicked side will come out. And it's a Tuesday night. I'll keep her locked up tonight. Tori says, boo, I want to meet her. And then Darcy is like, no, I have to go meet Seth. And as she gets to her room, Lance is texting her. So she's on her way home, and Lance is like, you do like keeping a guy in suspense, don't you? Darcy's like, for someone who is very clear about what doesn't happen above swimming pools, I'm surprised you're still looking for the answer to your last question. Lance says, what about the question before that? Green or blue? Darcy, what difference does it make to you aside from being able to tell me and my sister apart? Lance says, blue means you like me.
Yeah.
And Darcy was like, that makes no sense. Besides, blue hair meant something to me once, but I don't need it anymore. So she puts it away, and then she goes back to, she finally gets to her room, and she pulls out her phone again, and Lance is like, I know what it meant. Darius told me after the fall party, but I have my own better meaning, and Solaria has one too. P.S. I fully intend to break that guy's legs once you give me his name, by the way. Really, Lance? Like, you're being so possessive over someone that you're like, I can't be with.
This next quote.
And then he says, I guess you're about to go back to radio silence, so for what it's worth, in Solaria, blue means royal, and to me,
Blue means you. It's so cute.
Where have we heard that quote before?
It's so cute.
Anyway, Seth knocks on her door and is like, did you watch the video? And she's like, no, I haven't. So she shuts the door in his face because she still has the moonstone out. And she's like, I don't want him to know. And so she starts watching, and it's essentially just him strip teasing. So she's like, I'm shutting this off. I'm not watching this anymore.
Yeah.
And he's like, did you watch it to the end? And at the end, it has a holding a sign over his junk that says, I renounce my claim to the throne of Solaria. That's huge. If she sells that to the press.
He could never sit on the Celestial Council.
Yes. So he's like, you have 4 hours. At midnight, it will automatically delete. Mm-hmm. So she's like, okay, well, I feel comfortable with you. And so she sends it to Tori and is like, if you don't hear from me by 11:30,
send it.
Send it to the press. And everybody's like, okay, be careful, like, blah, blah, blah. So Seth is like, there is another way for you to please me, essentially. Mm-hmm. He's like, we just have to bond. So they go for a run, and then they sit down and they kind of talk. They're just like talking and like being open and honest with each other. And he's like, sex is so much easier than this. And she's like, well, I'm not doing that ever. And so he kind of explains what he went through when he was a young pup. How, like, his parents left him in the cold for a whole week. And he almost died. As a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
He was 5 years old.
A little wolf. They're just like, here, go out in the snow and survive. And if you are alive by the time we come back for you, then you can be a wolf in the pack.
And he says, I survived, so I passed. And then he was essentially like, you reminded me of the promise that I made to myself to never do this to anyone ever again. And he's like that's a pretty significant thing for him because he had forgotten that he promised to never do that to anyone, and he did it to Darcy.
Yeah.
Like, he was hurting her for no reason. And she had this like instinct to console him, and so she hugged him, and he's like, oh, thank fuck for that. Welcome to the pack, babe. You're officially initiated. Darcy is now part of Seth's pack.
In the pack. Do you think his pack is going to like that she's officially in the pack?
No. But it's his plan to get her out.
Yeah. She has to be in the pack and then kicked out. Booted.
Yes. And then we move to a Darius chapter. Mm-hmm. He and Lance have been working together. And he finally tells him about Xavier.
Yeah.
And Lance is like, well, maybe you can get like some other Pegasuses to talk to him because they're pack order. Like, they need to be
around other Pegasus, just like
around
werewolves.
Others.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, he heals him because he's like a little ahead because he didn't eat because he was talking to Xavier. And he's like, go get some food and then go back to class. They are go back to your house. They are after curfew right now. So they're like a little worried about him getting caught, but he's an heir who really gives a shit.
Yeah.
And
he goes into the orb.
After Washer like came up to him and was like, hey, I see you. Mm-hmm. And Washer's trying to like bring sex out of like lust, and Darius is like, no, like, fuck you, like, go away. So he goes into the orb and he sees that there's a glamour. He can kind of hear it. He sees that there's a glamour, and he sees Diego, Sophia, and Tori. Tori is drunk off her ass,
like, ridiculously,
and she's like doing a striptease because she got dared and she lost the dare. So she's doing a striptease. And he's like, it's so hard not to look at her, blah, 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 blah. But he's like trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
And then she falls. And she's like passed out. And her magic starts going crazy. And he like, there's ice everywhere. And so he goes to try and help her to control her magic. Because it's normal. Like, when you're super powerful like that, when you're first awakened, your magic can go haywire when you're having like dreams. And so he finally gets up to her. And she's like coughing up water, and he realizes like what nightmare she's having.
A nightmare of drowning.
Weird. So he averts her magic and turns it to earth, and like flowers sprout everywhere, and she calms down, and she's like, please don't leave me. Like, I need to be with you, blah, blah, blah. So he takes her back to her room. Sophia. She's not very powerful. We know this. Yeah. Darius knows this. But she stands up to him. She's like, no, you're not taking her. Like, we can do it. And then she follows him up to his bedroom and is like, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, she does not want this. He's like, I would never take advantage of her
Mm-hmm.
when she's in this state, blah, blah, blah. And
Right before that, though, this is the second instance in the series where Diego has been involved with a party.
yeah, and the girls
Drinks.
are getting way more drunk than
And
they
the girls are getting
originally had planned.
way, way, way more drunk than they were normally get.
Yeah.
Like, Tori can handle
Diego,
alcohol.
as soon as Tori passed out, Diego was like, hey, go find a teacher. Like,
Uh-huh.
leave us alone.
I'll take care of her. Yeah. Sketchy.
And so
Yeah, Darius takes her up
he
to his
goes,
room.
yeah, he goes, I'm not a fucking rapist. I can have any girl I want. Blah, blah, blah. She's like, okay, I didn't mean to imply. And then he's like, Sophia's a Pegasus.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, wait, I have this cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And he's essentially trying to get her to talk to Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
And she is like, you know, everyone says Darius Acrux is heartless and cold-blooded, just like the dragon he turns into, but you're not, are you? You actually give a shit about other people, don't you? You want to protect them, look after them. She's like, I'll message you my number. You can tell Philip to message me whenever he likes. And then they go in there and he lays Tori down on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she like doesn't even realize that she's really in his room.
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts kicking her shoes off, and she takes her skirt off, so she's just in like her underwear. And he's like trying to go sleep in a separate chair, but she's like pulling him into the bed. And
At one point she says, I can do it myself, Darcy. You shouldn't have to look after me like this, thinking that she is with her twin.
And then he goes to another chair, and she's like, don't go. He's like, I don't really think you understand who I am. She's like, please don't leave me alone. But her eyes were open, so she was looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
And she still had her like broken button shirt on. And he's like, this is not a good thing. Like, I can't sleep next to you while you're dressed like that.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes her shirt off. And he's like, taking more clothes off is not the way to go. So she's like, well, give me your shirt then. So she straddles him and like pulls his shirt off of him. And he's like so stunned. And then she gets his shirt on, and she's like, can I tell you a secret? And then he's like, what? Like drawing her closer because he wants to know. And she's like, I think that I'm going to puke. And she gets up and runs to the bathroom. And then they get in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you're unbelievable. You know that? He's like, in what way? And then she goes, you have the biggest goddamn jacuzzi I've ever seen in your bathroom. And then they fall asleep.
Yeah.
And we go into a Tori chapter. This is the last chapter that we're going to talk about.
This is her waking up.
Yep, this is when she wakes up in Darius's bed. So she starts it off by thinking she's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like maneuvering around, and she's like, what dream guy wears jeans to bed? And then he talks. He's like, if you keep doing that, I'm going to stop being a gentleman about this situation. And she like
is like, oh shit,
freezes. Doesn't move, nothing, just kind of asks what happened. And they're talking back and forth, and she's like, please tell me I didn't.
That we did not do.
That this didn't happen.
Yeah. And
he's like, I prefer my girls a little less blind drunk and a little more eagerly responsive. Besides, you wouldn't forget it if I'd fucked you.
She goes, he says that she was drunk so wasted that you passed out and started using your magic in your sleep. And she goes, I frowned at that. I had been drunk, yeah, but I can handle my alcohol. Passing out in public places was pretty full on even for me, and I was fairly sure I wouldn't have drunk that much. Wouldn't I?
Yep.
So now she's questioning herself.
Well, she like remembered being buzzed and then nothing. So she went from completely fine to gone.
Blackout drunk, yeah.
And then they essentially get to the point where they're like, she's like, yeah, you wouldn't then, but I'm not drunk now.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's a little bit of charged tension. And then she was like, so what kind of magic was I throwing out while I was asleep?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, was I something happy? And he was like, no, it was more like a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, there's only one nightmare I ever have. And he's like, you were freezing everything around you. She says, right. And then she goes to get up, and he's like, don't go. Like, tell me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just leave. She's like, tell you about what? And so she starts telling him about her nightmare. And she's like putting it on him because it is like, it used to just be her being drowned in the car from her ex. Now when she goes to go up to the surface, it freezes because of what they did to her.
And so she can't get
and
out.
He's like trying to defend himself, which I don't think was the way he should have gone here.
No.
Because he's like, I didn't know, like,
Max
when Max
was the one
took
that
it from
pulled it from
you, we didn't really understand the actual consequences. And then he tries to talk about himself.
Yeah, he was like, we only wanted to show everyone that you weren't strong enough to face yours. I guess we really didn't think through all the repercussions. She's like, good enough for what? Everyone has fears, and yeah, maybe facing them is good sometimes. But what you and your friends did to us was out of some sort of sense of trying to make us stronger. It was cruel and calculated, and it was fucked up.
Yes. And then she gets up. She's trying to find her clothes. She goes to her bag. She has the dagger in her bag. And she kind of goes through a little bout with that. And then she closes it quickly. And then Darius explains to her kind of that his dad was really ruthless with him. And beat him and drowned him and walked through fire and jumped from cliffs, locked him in tight spaces, whipped him, like everything. And she's like, well, congratulations. Now you're just like him. And Darius's face fell like I just punched him, and the door spilled open behind me. He was like done with the conversation, because I think that was a really, not that it was a low blow, because I think he deserved it, but like that hit him for real, because that's what he doesn't want to be like. That's what he's trying to get rid of. And she was like, well, you're literally doing what he did to you, so congratulations. And so she goes to her bedroom. She tries to wash everything off, and while she's in the bathroom, she's like, how had I managed to hop from tipsy to blackout without seeing it coming? Like, she's still thinking about how that had happened. And then she gets her, oh my gosh, what is it called?
Her horoscope.
There you go. And it's essentially like, you might start seeing things differently today. But a Libra and a Pisces will work to dampen your flame. But keep heart. If you can make it through the hard part, you may just find your luck changing as the day wears on. And then there were messages from
the Libra
Sophia.
Is definitely Orion.
Yeah, she thinks it's Orion. But she sees messages from Sophia, Diego, and Darcy, like, hey, what's going on? And she's like over the airs. So she goes into her closet and pulls out a bag, and that's all we know so far. Doesn't say anything about what's in the bag. And so after she puts that in her bag, she's headed to the orb, and she goes down to the common room, and everybody's like, fresh meat, trying to get her, and she super big magics people away, and Darius is like, leave her alone. So she gets out. She gets to go to the orb, and she puts a glamour over herself, because Sophia had taught her how to do that. And as she's in there, she plants a unicorn dildo in the couch and plants a whip that has Caleb Altair's name on it. And so, and then she gets coffees, and she goes and sits down, and she's waiting for Darcy. So she drinks her coffee, and Darcy gets in, and they're like kind of giggling about it. And so the heirs finally come in, and they are like, what the fuck is this? And Max finds, so Max dropped into his seat the same moment Caleb did, and he instantly shifted to yank the horn vibrator out from under his cushion. Geraldine was walking past them and stopped to point. For the love of sanitary sausages, please tell me you aren't bringing your depraved hobbies in here where we all eat our meals. It's bad enough you paid a griffin to take a dump on your chest without bringing your Randy Rocket out with you for breakfast. And so Geraldine knows what happened. She helped them. So she's like driving it home with all of this shit. Darcy and I choked on our laughter at what she'd accused him of. It was fucking genius. Geraldine swept away, heading for us with mischief glimmering in her eyes as laughter broke out around us. And Max is like, this isn't mine. Someone says, no, that looks like it must be Caleb's. And so the heirs are like getting all ruffled. And then someone yells, did you really pay a griffin to take a dump on your chest, Max? A girl shouted, because I'd do it for free. So the heirs get really pissed. And they're like, when we find out who's behind this shit, you're going to wish you were never born. And then they get up and leave. They storm from the room with a cascade of laughter. Galloping gargoyles, that might have been the best one yet. Geraldine gushed, and even though laughter was definitely making my headache worse, I was pretty sure I had to agree. So,
nothing crazy yet.
Nothing crazy yet. They're starting to like keep picking on the heirs, which is good. Like they haven't done anything since a pitball match, obviously, because
they
of
haven't
disaster.
Forgotten what they did to them.
They have not forgotten.
Seth's little backstory.
Seth is definitely above Max. He's tied with Darius for me right now.
Seth and Darius.
Seth is moving up a bit.
Yeah.
So Orion, Caleb, Seth and Darius and Max is still
at the bottom.
5th, 6th 10th, 1000th
Poor
because I
Max.
hate him.
Tyler Corbin is starting to.
Oh yeah, he's
like,
another boy. I can include
like
him.
the
I like
girls.
him. I don't like him
Yeah.
more than Caleb, but I like him.
Yeah. And then Sophia now has given her number to Darius to talk to Xavier.
To talk to Xavier.
We know Xavier's coming to school the
Well,
following year.
We don't know that yet.
His age-wise.
It doesn't matter. We don't know that he's coming because Lionel has made it.
But if everything works out according to plan, he should go to school next year. Yeah.
He's supposed to be coming to school next year.
That's
Lance
what I
made
mean.
a point in this little piece of like, once it's out, it's out.
Mm-hmm.
Like if everybody knows, Lionel just has to do damage control.
Yeah.
But if he continues to keep him hidden, he can like wipe him off the map.
And he has the power if nobody else knows.
Yep. So kind of take that power away from him is what like the idea that Lance was putting in Darius's head, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
What's he gonna do?
If it's already out there?
Can't kill him then.
Because then people are going to be like, oh, so you have a thing against these minor orders.
Yep.
Can't
Which
exactly do
everybody
that.
knows that already, but it would be a blatant thing that he's
To do.
doing.
And it would be obvious. Your son comes out as a Pegasus and then he just mysteriously dies.
Weird. And your wife dies. Weird.
Weird. Yeah.
But
And then the trials are coming.
yep, we know the trials are coming.
Very
we know
end
the
of it
reckoning is coming.
Is the solstice.
And the solstice is coming. We still don't know who Lionel's planning to use for that. We know that he's planning something similar to what we saw in point 5 with Clara.
Mm-hmm. We know
There's
that
a
he's officially
shitstorm
trying to go
coming.
after the girls.
Oh yeah, Darius thinks he's gonna try to kill them if he thinks that they're dragons.
The nymphs got onto.
We got to figure out how the nymphs got onto Zodiac Academy.
Yeah.
Diego is fucking creepy as fuck, and he's got something going on.
Yeah.
Like he's just bad. Washer is still iffy in my book, TBH.
Yeah.
Like I think he might be how they got on
You
to
think
Zodiac Academy.
Washer might be?
Yes.
But then why would he let everybody know that they were coming?
I don't know.
People to leave?
I don't know.
It's weird that the celestial counselors left right before that happened, and then they didn't come back.
Well, okay, you can say they didn't come back because they didn't know.
I'm sure that there was an immediate alert,
How?
some sort of tweet, something on Facebook. Oh no, Nymph said Zodiac. They were fighting for
A while.
Yeah. And
Super
Lionel
weird.
has Stardust at his disposal, like almost at all times. Like he never goes anywhere without it.
Super weird. Shit's about to hit the fan.
Yep.
I'm ready for it in this book, and I'm really excited. But that's all for now. Let us know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and we will see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.
When you look my way, it gave me shivers.